Okay, so here's the garland. That's what you're going to end up with, something along these lines. It doesn't matter if you've only got 2 flowers or haven't got as much to put in, or if you wanted to later on, you could actually add in some other foliage. So if you happen to have some things that are left over and you want in there and they fit with the colour theme, then yeah, absolutely, you can add what you would like. First things first then is the garland. We need to make quite a few of these little twiglets, and the way I'm going to do that is using 24 gauge wire, just cut into halves, or if you haven't got 24, use 26. I don't normally like to go any thicker or thinner than that, and we're going to use some just this is twig brown or brown, dark brown tape. So the difference between the twig brown and the dark brown is this is kind of got a greeny tinge to it. It doesn't really show green on the screen, but it's kind of I don't know, mossy green brown. And we want to create a little nodule. So some of you all already know how to do this. Take out 26 or 24 gauge half cut wire, start right at the top, start perpendicular to the wire. So hold your tape horizontal, your wire vertical, just allow a little flap on the other side so you can turn it over and glue itself to itself, because it's the tape that sticks to the tape rather than the tape to the wire. And then keeping it fairly horizontal, just overtake that area so that you get a thickened part. And then when you think this nodule's thick enough, just start to turn the tapes down at an angle, and then between your finger and thumb, pinch quite firm as you're taping down the wire. Now, sometimes what happens is that it doesn't fully cover the wire. So if that happens, we could go back up there, but just a little pinch and a press and a twist should actually get that attached. And then we continue down the wire. Okay. So we're going to do, I'm going to work out how many and I'll tell you in a moment. If you just make a start, because we definitely need at least 10 of these wires done in the same way. So I'll just show you that again. Coming right to the end of my tape here. This is quite a good little circle cutter. Use it for something, I'm sure. Multi-purpose. So we'll again start, put the flap over, give it a few twists. I've probably gone 4, 5, 6, 7. Make sure your tape is properly stretched. Turn it down at an angle. If you're right-handed, you might want to do this the other way, and then twist down, just making sure that you're not exposing white, leaving white wire exposed here. Okay. Now, once you've made about 10 of these, and we'll work together on that, we need to kink the wire. So the way I do that is just start maybe a finger here, thumb there, finger there, a few more fingers, and literally you just press against so that you end up with something that's a little bit more natural. We don't want it too bent, but we do definitely need something that's got a decent amount of kink and movement in it. All right. So I'm just going to show you that this is actually made in 2 parts. Let's move this out of the way as well. So you've got a few strands going on here. We might make some more in a bit. And just a little bit of flour. And then on this one, we've got less twigs, more. So most of it's assembled onto here, and then we've curved. I've actually put a nodule on the end of here so it looks like it's one, even though it's the bottom part. This will come clear in a moment. I'm just trying to give you a bit of an idea of what we're doing. And then one would overlay the other, and they come in to form one, and we strap it down, kind of weave it through and strap it down as we need. Okay, so I think my suggestion would be, let's start with this one, because then we will have an idea of how many twigs we've got left and how many more, if we need to extend anything and so on. So you'll notice on here that we've started off with 3 twigs. So that's what we're going to start on now. I've just got 3 of my twigs, and I want to stagger how they're put in. So we have 2 that are maybe have an inch or inch and a half gap at the top, and then 1 that's going to come in a little bit lower. And if you then come down quite low using the same colored tape again, everything's going to go in now with this dark brown. So that's the end of my what is now the shortest wire, and I'm just going to give myself an inch of taping, and you only need to twist this round 2, maybe 3 times, because then you can add in your first set of, your first flowers. So don't worry about curving this at this stage. If you pick on the Astrantia, if you've got big ones and small ones, pick one of the smaller ones. I always like to work with the smallest blossoms first on the outside. It just gives you that length and the delicate look, and then your eye is drawn into the bigger flowers in the center. So I'm just going to curve my Astrantia flower, and I'm going to place that. I want a decent amount of stem showing, but where it all starts to come together, where you've just started to tape, you could perhaps put your first Astrantia in there. And we want some of the stem sticking up. So if you feel like it's not gonna, if you feel like you've got a tape up here and your tape's down here, then you can always pull your tape off. But just make sure that you're not taping right up the top. You want to have some stem, which is going to give it some height as you put this in. So we're going to work about here. So I've given easy an inch and a half, and we'll just add a couple of twists in there. Keep your tape nice and stretched, and as we go along, bring your fingernail in to those gaps between the twigs and the stem, just to tighten the tape up and make it look neat. And just try and keep these in a rounded, as you add more flowers, just try and keep these stems so they're round in rather than side by side. Okay, and then I'm going to come down a little bit further and add in one of my larger Astrantia, which leaves me a slightly smaller one and a slightly bigger one for later on. Now that's got to come in, but down here somewhere. So I do need to tape this down a little bit further. I'm probably going to come to the end of the stem on this one. Yeah, so come to the end of the stem, and then we can add in our next one. And each time you add something, it's going to give you more length. If you decide that you're going to be struggling with length already, then what you can do at any point here is extend the working stem. Okay, I'm just getting a fresh piece of tape here, but if I want to, I don't really need to thicken it, but I could extend this, and if I just pop that in there like so, I could add that wire. You could put it at the back as well. Probably more neat if you do it at the back, because you can't see it. You probably won't see it anyway, but just try and keep this from spiraling, though. It's important that you have something that's fairly rounded and twig-like rather than handmade looking. So yeah, we can tape down to the end again where we stopped before. So this I can bend a fraction, and now I've got some working length. I can add my next flower in, and I do like the fact that this is lower down, but the stamens themselves are virtually touching. To give you an idea, there is a distance on the stem, and there's a defined drop. If you have a look at where that petal is versus the others, Okay, I'm going to lay that where it wants to sit. Give it a press because it's got tape on already and your brown tape is sticky. It should temporarily hold ready for you to tape. Come down again. I'm going to leave this loose, the tape loose on there. Now the idea as you go along is not only are we kind of making this curved garland, we also want to make sure that we've got like a triangle of height. So everything we add in is going to get higher because of course it's bigger. So if I show you on this one, you'll see if I turn this at an angle, you can see we've gone from low to higher. So it's going up at an angle. So once these are secure, you probably want to now break off your tape because you might be starting back up here somewhere. Just get myself an extra spare bit of tape. Stretch, get your tape prepared before you start, and then it's just so much easier because once you're holding something, you haven't got a third pair of hands. So this one, again, I've bent the stem and I'm just going to nestle that so that it comes in between these flowers that we've put on already, the Astrantia, but down a bit, okay? Because if I put it up here, it's immediately too wide because it's quite open. If you notice as well, if there's a kind of if it's more closed up on this side, that could be the side that goes onto the flowers. So just pick the best side of what you've made. Okay, so that's going to go in there. So it's down from the first flower. This one's almost sitting beside. I feel like I want it to come down just a little bit more because that's going to make my spray a bit more on the delicate side. So yeah, it's coming in lower. And then we can pick up our tape. And this one, I think I'm going to tape where the stem becomes thin. You've got a very thick part where you've added all your stems in. And now just concentrate on taping from the thinner part of the wire. Again, leave this tape on there and maybe just have a look at what you're doing and adjust. Remember, this is kind of a top view when you're making this. It's not a 360. Some of your arrangements will be, but this one isn't. So we'll put the dogwood in next, but if you decide that this bud is going to be in your way for the initial taping, then you can actually remove it. So if you just take hold of both stems, hold really tight and pull, what you'll find is that the wire will come out and you'll just have a bit of excess tape that you can pull off. Okay, we don't need to remove anything more than that. But that is the fastest way. Sometimes I have to kind of cut in the join, but that is the quickest way to get it off. And then that leaves us with your dogwood and just with 2 leaves attached. But if you don't mind it like this, then I would keep it like that, and we can add the bud in, or we can add the flower in and the bud together. Okay, so just showing you the next bit, which is the bud. We're trying now, not only are we creating like an angle triangle this way, we're also trying to come out here. Okay, so we've got a triangle this way. And it, again, all the creations that I make, whether it's a garland or any other way, C shape, S shape, they're all created with triangles in mind. That's a flower arranging thing as well. So at this point, I'm going to bring my separated bud in because I want it up here. Now, if I had kept it on there, it'd be down here somewhere. I quite like that bud. And the foliage looks good there as well. That's just sitting in quite comfortably. I've got a decent amount of stem. And I'm probably going to tear off my tape and just bring that in. So I'm taping it in about 1.5 centimeters below where I've attached my cow parsley, but on its own. If you're happy with how your bud has gone onto your flower, then you don't have to separate them. So give that a few twists. Sometimes you want to over tape just to be sure that you're out of the way. And I've only got a little bit of tape left here, so I'm just going to do that. And bring my nail into this join. Curve the bud. That could even sit in there if you wanted it to, or out. Depends how you like it. Like, you can always tweak after, as long as you've got things in. Okay, so just opening up the tape again. And now I'm going to pop my flower in, and I want to see where this is going to fit. So on the arrangement that I showed you, this one's nestled on the inside, so your cow parsley's at the outside, your bud is on the outside. So we can pull the cow parsley a little bit out of the way, and that gives us a gap on the inside. And my flower, I want to curve it just a little bit more. And I'm going to tape it in right underneath that leaf. So place that onto your garland. We want it to be higher than the cow parsley and the Astrantia. So let it overlap a little bit here. Okay. It's coming quite a way down the stem. You've got that triangle angle. You've got that triangle here as well. So tape in. Press it quite firm, get your tape on. It's getting a bit heavy now. Probably 4 or 5 turns just to make sure that we're happy, and then get your nail in. Okay, we can pull that away from the Astrantia so it doesn't crash, and you can just adjust your leaves. So with arrangements or sprays, whatever you're making, it's also very nice to have little discoveries. So not everything needs to be full facing, completely separated. So it would have been very easy for us to say, oh, we won't go anywhere near the cow parsley, we'll stick that in there. And of course, that would have left you quite a big gap where you can see the stem. So just leave room for the butterflies, but leave room for a discovery as well. Now, again, I've had a look at the way I've put this bud in and how that is impacting on my arrangement. You can see because the join is here, that means that I've got an awful long way to go. I mean, it's all right, but I feel like I want my other buds here again, just to kind of be close to this one, really. So leave it if you like it. If not, do that quick wire removal. Pull that off. Oops, shaking the table. And then I do quite like 2 buds together. And like this one, I didn't choose it this way, but this one's slightly bigger than this one, so that's is nice as well. So keep your curve going. We are going to properly turn this into a semicircle shortly. But I'm going to add that one in. I'm going to leave it quite free here. I'm going to tape it in just below the leaves, and I've got it a little bit lower than the other bud, but I quite like the look of that. Maybe I come down just a little bit lower, in about there, I think. So a lot of this is done by eye. You're a bit, as opposed to real flower arranging. I mean, obviously, real flower arranging is quite tricky because you've got to condition the flowers and everything, and it's very seldom now that you see people wiring flowers. You could do this with fresh flowers for sure, but you wouldn't use this tape. You'd use a different tape, and you'd have to condition every flower. Also, the flower stems, they don't normally bend. If they're real, they don't normally bend in the right way. So that's one big bonus of actually, I'm moving that there now, and that looks quite nice. Okay, so that's my flower bud going in. And then we've got to decide where our second flower goes. Now, I've only got 2 flowers for this arrangement. If you've got a third one, you can add that in as well. But I've got 2, and I know I want to kind of elongate the arrangement a bit more. So I'm going to put that one probably in about here. Now, if you are adding more foliage, so for example, ivy or eucalyptus, purely optional, and if you've got it. So you could, if you want to, put that foliage in next. It's going to fill in some gaps, widen it a little bit, but you may decide that the colouring's not right. I think my eucalyptus is quite nice, but I don't know about my, if I'm putting ivy in, I think that doesn't work for this arrangement, so I wouldn't add that in. Sometimes less is more. You don't need to put everything you've got into something, but I will put this one in just so you can see. It really doesn't matter if you haven't got anything extra to put in. You don't need to worry, it's still going to look really nice. But you'll notice as well that most of the flowers are going, most of everything we've made are going onto this one single stem, and the final stem is only going to have the Astrantia and the cow parsley on. That's, for something like this, is ideal because of the way it's assembled. But often when you're making arrangements, there are 2 parts to it which you bring together at the end. And normally what I try and do is actually divide what I've made into 2 equal piles, whether you use them all or not, whether you add one extra item onto one side or not. It's a good idea to divide everything in half, so you know you've definitely got enough. And the other thing would the same if you're making 3 arrangements for, say, a wedding cake, and you've got a top, a middle, bottom. You really need to make sure that you divide your flowers before you start, so that you have enough to assemble each spray. Now, often what happens is that when you've assembled one, you'll think, oh, I've been working on the top tier. And then when you hold it on the cage, you'll think, oh, okay, that's big enough to do the middle or the bottom, in which case you can then scale the number of flowers that you're adding to your top or your bottom tier, or you can have everything the same size. Really, there is no hard and fast rule nowadays. In the past, you say top tier, smaller, more delicate, middle tier a bit larger, bottom tier even bigger. But now I think you could do what you want. There's no rule at all. So get your nails in there, tighten that up. So that is your bud and any optional extra foliage that you might want. If you've just got 2 flowers, then the next one will probably come in at a diagonal. So rather than here, which doesn't necessarily look right, it's probably going to come in here. Even if you've got 2 flowers, that's where it's going to go. Okay, or even if you've got 3 flowers, that's where it's probably going to go. And then your 3rd flower will come in further down and on this side. These are all going to be kept in roughly the same height. You might find one will be a little bit higher than the other. So because I'm going to put 3 in, but I'm just going to alternate my colors because this is one of my old flowers from the original spray. So this is going to give me a different shade. So I'm feeling like it probably wants to balance. No, I don't like that. So we'll put the pink one in. Got my leaves on here already. I'm going to position that on the wire and then just have a look to see where that takes me. This petal here is just above. So that's meaning really that that flower potentially is a little bit lower set than this one, which is right because we're still coming towards, we're almost in the middle, or are now in the middle. So the highest flower would be in the center of your arrangement. Quite a long stem. And we'll take that in. So whether you've got 2 or 3 flowers, this is where the next one goes. Now it is at this point as well that the thickness, the width of the wire tape is going to make it a little bit fragile because your stem is becoming thicker. Now I never usually have the thick tape as well. This is like the half thickness, and you've got the one that is full thickness. And at this point, if you find that your tape is twisting or tearing, that's where you would convert onto the thicker tape if it's the same color. Again, get your nails in there nice and neat. And if you've got something smooth or shiny or plasticky, then you can actually use that to rub along. So again, you can see we've got a nice triangle shape this way. Got a nice kind of triangle going this way. So what I'm going to do is, that's going to be the end of that stem. Okay, so I'm looking at it thinking, yes, we can put the other dogwood rose, dogwood flower, the Astrantia, the bud, anything else that we've got that we want to add in on the other sprig. So we're creating this is our first sprig, we're going to create a second sprig. So I'm just going to tape pretty much all the way down on this. Actually, I'm going to take it to there. Okay. Just so we've got some wiggle room with the taping when we start to join the 2 pieces together. And here, if you want to, you can rub with something shiny. You take the wraparound markings. So that is our first half. And then we need to, now we've got all this together, we're actually going to kind of undo it a little bit, not from an unwrapping, but we need to turn the wires because at the moment they're quite straight. So I suppose we can start by doing this one. That's easy, but then we need to continue that curve, watching out that you don't crash your Astrantia because they are super fragile. So move your main flower out of the way and bend maybe that whole stem section around, and then you need to replace what's been displaced. If you feel that things then are not where they want to be, because that's often what happens when you start to adjust these things. So now we've got a nicer curve. There's a bit of a dink in there, so I feel like I want to bring that in. And then this outer part, whoops. So that's what happens if you're not careful, because the Astrantia are just very, very fragile. Try and bring your wires around. And then if you plait them a little bit, so you can give them more of an open, kind of a more of an exaggerated kink, which will then keep them open as you weave them. You don't need to do much at this stage because you can always add a bit of weave in once you're putting it all together. So you're forming a third of the curve. Or not if you're keeping it as a crescent. Well, you could still bend it. And just watch out, just take your time to do that. So we've got a nice little, needs to be a bit more bent. Again, watch out for the Astrantia petals because they are going to get broken. So you can see how that's starting to form. And when we've got the other side to it, which has got a longer length of wire, this will overlap and intermingle. So it makes it look fuller. Okay. And then when you're ready, you can put this to one side and we'll start the next one. So my first 3 wires on the second half of this arrangement have been staggered in height, taping down here about 1 inch from the shortest wire. And then I want to extend the wire just a little bit. I'm probably going to put 2 24 gauge or 26 gauge wires in there just to help me a little bit, thickens the stem. And now I can start to add in more. I'll take that down a little further. And then add in just making these nodules step down just a little bit each time. I've probably got 3 left, which I'm just going to keep separated for a moment and tape these down all the way. Or pretty much to the end. I do think that buds, seed pods, twigs, they all add to the structural look of an arrangement. So these, I'm going to start off these last 3 just the same as we did the first 3 here, but I'm not going to extend the wire. I'm just going to get those taped in, come down a little bit further, and then these can be added in as a separated sprig down the bottom here, so there's a bit of a gap. Now if it's wrong, we can always undo it, but I just want something where we've got a bit of a gap in there, just makes it look like it's a branch or a twig coming off a branch. Could put fairy lights on this and put it in a vase. Okay, so the next step is we want to bend this round because we need to know to what extent we're bending it and where the next things are going to go. So I'm going to start at the thick end just because it's easier, and just start to try and keep these separate and come onto this main stem here and start to bend it round. We can always open all of this up again, but let's get a rough idea on how the loop is going to end up. Okay, so that's possibly going to be sitting on it like so. And then that will give us a bit of an indication on where we can start to tape in our flowers. So we're not adding more flowers onto the stem we've already made, but we are actually going to add it onto this one here. And we eventually want, so that we've got it close, this part here needs to be filled in with all the flowers. So I'm just going to kind of roughly hold up what I'm going to put in and go from there. So we've got a large cow parsley, small cow parsley, because we had one on the other side. You don't need to worry too much about where these are going in at this stage, just roughly. And then we've got an Astrantia. Okay, so on that basis, we've got a bud in there and some foliage as well. But looking at that, that's probably where on that second stem I've just made, this is going to start. So it's not far from the end. So if that's the same for you, then I would add in an extending wire or a couple of extending 24 or 26 gauge wires. So we have definitely got enough twiglets, but maybe we don't have that length. So I'm just going to put in, can just bend those a little bit so they form the contour, stagger them a little bit so that they don't look stepped, so one is slightly higher than the other, and then just get those taped in. Watch out when you twist round now, because you might find that this will catch something else that's on the surface nearby, namely my camera, or an Astrantia. Just one of my Astrantia flowers just went flying as well because I didn't think. So we keep taping. And this I suggest we tape all the way along. And I'm also going to suggest that we make a little node at the end, because then when we put this all together and it crosses over to the other side, it can look like a twig. So sorry, this is hitting my camera and flowers and everything. You can probably hear it catching. Come all the way up to the top here. And then if you've got tape left, if not, get yourself a fresh bit. Just move some of this out of the way. So as you did to make your little node before, do the same here. So keeping your tape nice and tight, horizontal to your vertical wire, and get yourself a little node on the end. It's a little bit harder because it's got lots going on down the bottom here, but as long as that looks a bit pointed and a bit knobbly, that will finish it off nicely. Okay, you don't need to bend this bit at the moment. The Astrantia is going to be the first thing that I put onto this side. This is where I've extended the wire. So this, when we put it on, when we put everything together, is going to transfer onto the other side of the garland. So I would suggest, because we've got this join here as well, that we probably begin assembling within this area, a couple of inches. So as we did before, pick up your Astrantia flower. So you're either putting one or two in. We've put two on the other side and putting one on this side. The cow parsley, we put in two on this side, we put one on the other. Pick this up. We've got a decent curve in there. Bending it up, its face up a little bit as well. And then that can sit so that it's hiding maybe that join. but allowing it to have about an inch's worth of stem. So try not to tape it in tight up here. There is a real tendency to tape everything right by the neck of the flowers, and that just doesn't look right. It looks constricted and a bit unnatural. So I always try and, well, depending on what flower it is and how it grows, I try and leave a little bit of stem, but not so it's floppy. So if you've got a larger and a smaller sprig of cow parsley, work with the smaller sprig first, like you did before. Bend it. It's just because everything else is curved. And it also enables you to have this facing more upright. So we can sit that one onto our spray. Have a look at where it's sitting. So probably somewhere like this. You can see it's just down from the Astrantia. And I'm going to take that. Oops. Just make sure your tape is stretched fully before you start working with it, because it's really difficult. It does have a tendency to break when you're starting to twist it. If you're trying to twist and stretch at the same time, get your nails in and attach. You can carefully open those up. We don't want all the bits to flick off, but we can definitely open that up. And if you've got a second one, the same again, bending. And that can be added in just so it's a little bit lower down. Now it might be we'll move these out a bit in a bit. I don't know yet. We'll see how it looks when we're done. Take that one in too. And I would probably, if you've got a little strip of tape there, I'd probably use it up, taping this one down. Again, taking care not to catch anything with this curled bit up here, because it is really in the way. Pressing quite firm on the stem just to make sure the tape is neat. It's really important that your arrangement looks good, but your taping looks good too. So I've got my single bud here. I have got a leaf. Let me add my leaf in. But my leaf hasn't got any tape on it, so I will give that a little bit of a tape. I always tape, even if you've got green wires, because the green that the wire is, the green paper that's on the wire, it's not really very natural. So I always prefer to tape. We can add that onto our, we're going to use dark brown now. Don't need to go all the way down because we're going to be taping that anyway. And we'll have a look, because this is like the mirror image. So where do we want it? Okay, it could be up there. I quite like it up there, actually. I think I'm going to keep it up the top. I have a nice length of stem here, so that's pretty much going in, taping at the same point that I've taped in my cow parsley. You could have it lower down if you want. Take down by about an inch or so if you want. This is where you start to see the twist of the wire, so give that a nice little rub. Get your nails in there, neaten it up. So the next step, I think, I mean, if you've got extra foliage, so I've got some eucalyptus spare here still, that can go in a minute, but I'm going to put my flower in first. And like we did on the other side, I've moved one of my cow parsley inward, so the curved side. So I've got a gap here, and we can pop this one in. Now, it may be we'll have to move the head of the flower in a little while. Just bear in mind that your main flower here is the tallest one, or this one's the tallest one. This one needs to be a bit lower. So at this point, I'd probably hold it to the arrangement and just check that this is not sticking its head out too far. If it is, bring it down the stem a little bit, and that should actually lower it in. So we'll it needs to look right against your cow parsley as well, because your cow parsley doesn't really want to be sticking way up. And then we can get that taped in nice and firm. So I'm going to come up the stem a little bit just to get a bit more taped so it's not floppy, and then tape down a little way so that we can always change the angle of the flower head slightly, so it doesn't matter if it's in the wrong place at the moment. If you have got greenery that you want to put in, so for example, I've got a little sprig of eucalyptus here, so if I wanted to, you could actually add that in at this stage. I'll just show you roughly where I would put it. So possibly something like that. I mean, you could put more in. You just got to bear in mind, what is it you're trying to create, what's the look, does the color of whatever you're adding work with it, because this is quite blue. The one reason it works is because it's got an edge of pink on it, which is in the flowers as well. So these leaves are in the way, so we'll move those back a fraction, and then try and find a place for that to sit. Maybe in here. It's a bit like flower arranging. You just need to kind of play around a little bit and see where it looks best. Get that attached. I'm going to come up the wire a little bit more here, just get it in a bit further. So I'm probably going to tape from here down. I've got this spare towel of tape, so we'll just get that on first. Pre-stretch your tape. That bit in. Get your nail in. And now we need to tape to the end. So once you've got everything in there that you know you want, tape these together. So just give them a bit of a press. Some of them, if they're taped, will hold. And then let's pinch that tight to get a neat taping. It's at this point, especially as things are getting big and they're catching things as you spin, that you might have to change, and the way you're taping. So this whole wrap around might be better and safer. It's always recommended that you assemble over a surface as well, rather than the floor, because sometimes when you break the tape off, you can create a judder and then the whole thing falls and shatters before your eyes. I've just realized as well that this piece here is not going to be the end bit, but I'm going to pull that out. I feel like maybe I wanted that a bit longer. Just unravel that a little bit. We've created that piece, so it doesn't make sense to not use it. And we could always put another node at the end here. And with this bit, we wouldn't have known because we didn't know we were going to extend, but so it's no time loss, really, just a bit of tape. You have to be a bit flexible when you're putting these things together because you just don't know how it's going to come out. I'm just going to get another bit of tape and over tape this and create another little nodule at the end. Emina, do you go into items very often, or?
Still recording, Hannah.
So I've got my little extra node on the end here, which then gives this like a complete finish. I'm going to suggest we do the same on this wire. I know we didn't do it earlier, but let's do that as well. You don't have to put a node on the end if you don't want to, but let's at least get it taped down. Again, you might have to do the taping as a wraparound, so you're not flinging your arrangement around. Nothing worse than all that work getting smashed. So the only disadvantage to wrapping around is it doesn't tend to stick nice and tight, so just go back and press firm to get that on. And then, yeah, let's get a nice just turn the angle, come back. There's a nice little node on the end of there. Okay. So once we've got that node on there, we can continue our curve. I'll probably hold just above or between where the flower and where the main dogwood flower and the cow parsley has been put in. If you just hold it there and then just gently bend this round to form 2/3 of the loop. And if anything moves out of place, just move it back. We can do a final tweak. So now we've got 2 half garlands, if you like. And then this one gets picked up. And we want to slide this wire end under and then slowly bring them together until you've got all the flowers meeting. Okay, so what I mean by gappy is that's quite gappy, isn't it? Got a big gap in the middle, doesn't look right. So just keep drawing it round until you've got a decent, not so much of a gap between. Okay, if I'm looking at this, I still feel like there's a gap in there. Now that could be overcome potentially by bringing just a flower forward. So you can do that, or you may still need to position it more tightly, but that's just done it. That's just quite happy with that. Okay, I'm just holding at the back here where they're crossing. If I give that a little press, it should stick to itself just long enough for me to get my tape. Now, with this, try not to have too long a piece of tape, because trying to get that wrapped in between is quite tricky, because we now need where that crosses. I'll just double check as I pick it up where that crosses. We turn it the other way. that's where you're going to secure. Okay, so we've got to find a little gap in there, wherever. It could be further, it doesn't have to be right in the middle, but there's like a convenient gap where all I've got is 2 main stems that cross, and I haven't got all of this in the way. So I'm probably going to cut my tape in half. So that I can get in there, because this is the really tricky bit. So if you just threadle tape, catch the end, hook or by crook on this. So start by getting one end stuck on, just rub it so it sticks on. Keep hold of both stems so that if anything breaks and it jolts, you don't drop it. And then just start to, can just help, just use something to get that through. So I've got a pinch on here to start with, and then I can apply a bit of pulling pressure on there to get the next one. And then we can go again. So maybe a pair of tweezers are needed to get this pulled back through, because you need to wrap it around maybe 4 or 5 times so that if there's a lot of weight, it won't rip apart. So get my next bit. Once you've got one lot on, it's easier, because you probably only need to tape an inch bit strip. So I'm probably going to tape from here to here. I don't need any more than that. So that's easier. I'm finding it easier to push that backwards and through and under. Whoops. So if it breaks, don't worry. Just pop it back on. And then when you feel you've got a nice secure attachment, just break off the tape and then use your fingers to clean that area up. And we're back to the front again. I'll let you do that first, and then I'll show you how we weave this in, which will make it even more secure. The last bit is to join these 2 ends. I mean, actually, I love it like that. You could keep, it looks even more rustic like that, doesn't it? So I want to bring this, I just want to bring this back a little bit because it doesn't quite look like it's in the right place. This one we've already woven in. This set of 3 here, and possibly this one, which is actually the end of this one here is the end of this side. So this could be woven as well. I mean, don't make it too tight because it doesn't look right, but you need those gaps. So if you don't want to weave them, then don't weave them, it's fine. This one I'm going to bring, just going to just play with it a little bit. Maybe, again, you can bend them as well. That might make a difference. And now we can bring the 2 together. So overlap slightly. So just be mindful about how tight you want your circle now. And this is the point where maybe one of these larger ones, because only take 1 or 2, can be woven around and then perhaps tucked in to lock. Be careful of your Astrantia. I've just broken one. So there's another one here which you can kind of feed in so that it doesn't spring back open again. And this one, again, maybe needs just a little bit of slotting in. I don't know. It just depends on how you want your wreath to sit. I quite like some of them being a bit loose and they break up the neatness of the circle. And once you've woven a couple of them in there, it shouldn't open up, or it would be easy for you to open it up if you need to, but it won't open up on its own. We can start to have a look at just the positioning of the flowers, and just using a pair of tweezers, or really careful when you're pulling these, especially the Astrantia, whatever that's stuck to, it's going to snap the petals off. I mean, I've actually lost quite a few petals off the Astrantia, but because it's such a busy, messy flower, you don't notice it. But now is the time to have a look at every leaf, every petal, every bloom, and get it into a position, not necessarily everything facing you, but into a position where it shows up at its best. And there you have your Dogwood, Astrantia and cow parsley wreath.